After a day of fishing with her son Evan on the Coosa River, Susan Osborne told her best friend Holly she'd caught a keeper.
Just like, I think he's the one I really want to give a chance.
She was talking about Air Force veteran Jerry Osborne. From the day the two met, Holly says Susan was head over heels.
I remember her sending me pictures of texts, and she goes, "This is the guy I'm really, really liking right now."
Jerry was the first man Susan dated after her divorce from Evan's father. The following year, they were married.
I don't believe he ever had a family before, so to him, this was his family.
Susan's mom, Linda ANKLAM, lived in Texas and only met her son-in-law a few times, but she says he seemed to be a great fit for her daughter and grandson.
He was very protective of them. He wanted Susie to look nice. He didn't mind buying her dresses all the time.
He also provided them with a nice home. Susan even quit her job so she could be a full-time wife and mother. The last time Linda visited them in Alabama was Mother's Day.
She took me out for a manicure, pedicure, we did lunch.
It was a great visit, but just a few weeks later, something completely out of the ordinary happened.
I went to Michigan in June for my granddaughter's graduation, and I was sending her pictures all the time, and I wasn't hearing anything. She wasn't answering for several days.
Linda says her daughter had never gone more than a day or two without returning her text or phone calls.
And my last text was jokingly, "Susie, if you don't answer my text, I'm going to have to come to Alabama and look for you."
Linda considered calling the police, but didn't want to upset her daughter, who was always very private.
I said, "I just don't want the police to go to her door and she's going to say, 'This is ridiculous that you're checking up on me.'"
She even sent Susan a letter, but to her shock, it soon came back marked not deliverable.
It made me sick when that letter came back.
Mysteriously, around the same time, Susan also stopped responding to her best friend Holly, who had moved away to South Florida just before Memorial Day.
The phone was disconnected. I started thinking, okay, is she mad at me because I moved? Then when I couldn't get anyone on Evan's phone either, and then they were both disconnected, I knew something had to be wrong.
Neither knew how to reach Susan's husband, Jerry.
I had no number for Jerry. I knew he worked at the Air Force Base.
Linda admits she hardly knew Susan's new husband. Now, after 2 months, she finally called the sheriff for help. Right away, deputies spot something curious: Susan's car in the driveway.
When we pulled up to the residence, we started to realize that this was probably more in depth than we initially thought.
With a knock on the door, they learn Susan and Evan aren't there, only her husband, Jerry Osborne.
Mr. Osborne opens the door and he's thoroughly cleaning his residence.
Then Jerry drops a Dear John surprise.
What does he tell you about his wife's disappearance?
That on Memorial Day, she decided to leave him. A man had come and picked her up and her son up.
Jerry tells cops the next day Susan returned, taking furniture and other items from the house. He also claimed to have proof that Susan and Evan were still alive.
He was able to produce a medical bill for Evan that he had obtained oral surgery a few days after they had supposedly left. The bill was for a no-show, for missing an appointment.
Detectives are quickly realizing that Jerry's explanations just don't quite add up. The next day, they return to his house armed with a search warrant and find him busy cleaning, just like the day before.
When he found out that we actually were there to investigate the matter, it would appear that he did some follow-up cleanup.
According to Detective Ogden, there shouldn't have been much to clean. He says Jerry had pulled off a major home makeover in just 2 months.
The house appeared to be almost completely remodeled on the inside.
Susan's friend Holly was in the house just weeks before Susan vanished and says a remodel was definitely not needed.
She had repainted the house probably less than 6 months before this.
So it was unnecessary to rip up the hardwoods and put carpet down?
There was no reason.
Jerry had also bought several pieces of new furniture, telling cops he burned the old furniture in the backyard, including mattresses and bed frames. People living nearby on Waterview Lane were all too familiar with Jerry's fires.
So much just aroma and smell of plastics burning.
Nikki Miller says there were days during the summer when the sky was completely filled with smoke.
So much smoke they couldn't even go outside in their yard, and this is 4 and 5 houses down.
With all the remodeling and cleaning, detectives were worried any evidence of foul play might be lost forever. So they turned to a powerful investigative tool. What happened to Susan Osborne and her son Evan?
It's just as if they just fell off the face of the earth.
Missing since Memorial Day, her family spent the summer worried sick.
I cry myself to sleep a lot.
I'd wake up with nightmares.
But bad dreams were about to become real life. After a full 2 months with Susan and Evan missing, Susan's mother finally reports the disappearance to the Elmore County Sheriff's Department.
We're 60 days behind the 8 ball trying to work a missing persons case. That's not a good situation to be in.
But Jerry told detectives his wife wasn't missing. He claimed she left him for another man on Memorial Day.
Who's this man?
He was not able to provide anything other than a vague physical description.
As far-fetched as the story sounded, detectives learned Susan did the same thing to her first husband, Evan's father.
Did Susan ever up and leave previously?
Susan did.
But her brother Brian says it was only after her marriage had fallen apart and the circumstances were very different.
She had no money, her water was being shut off, so I moved every one of her possessions up to my house.
This time, when Susan's best friend, Hollie Hatfield, hears news of another man, she is immediately perplexed.
She told me everything. If she was going to leave him or do anything, I would be the first to know.
During their initial visit, detectives say Jerry was busy cleaning. They also learned that he'd done an extensive summer remodel of his home, all by himself.
He had freshly painted the inside of his house. New carpeting had been installed. Old flooring had been taken up by him and disposed of. New furniture had been put in the house, and he had burned and disposed of multiple pieces of furniture.
Because of the thorough cleaning and extensive remodel, curious detectives were now left with one critical tool in the search for evidence.
What's referred to as luminol.
Luminol is a chemical used to detect blood, not visible to the naked eye. In a Crime Watch Daily exclusive, detectives reveal luminol used in the home unmasked a stunning development.
How many indications of blood were there?
It was approximately 20.
Possible blood evidence was found in the kitchen, laundry room, and guest bathroom.
When you have this high number, is that indicative of something sinister and foul play?
That's very indicative of something that's along the violent lines of not a finger cut by any stretch of the imagination.
And you're saying you were only able to detect it with luminol because someone, in this case, you think Jerry, went through great lengths to try to clean it up.
Absolutely.
The blood samplings have been sent to a crime lab to determine if they belong to Susan or Evan. Results will take a few months.
And hopefully that'll lend some credence to what we already believe took place.
That Evan and Susan succumbed to foul play.
Right.
Whatever happened to her daughter and grandson, Susan's mom thought it would be captured on the home's elaborate security system. She says there were cameras at every door.
I know that for a fact because I asked Susie, was it necessary for them to have a security camera?
But when cops went to look for recorded data,
it was no longer there because what did he do? He replaced the security camera. He went out and bought another one the 1st of June.
Investigators say 2 cadaver dogs detected possible human remains at or near a 55-gallon drum where Jerry burns his trash, but none were ever found.
Nothing is there right now.
Because he was burning something.
Absolutely.
Sheriff Franklin also believes some very suspicious evidence was found on Jerry's computer, but he's not revealing exactly what that evidence is.
Are we talking about in the vein of how to dispose a body, how to get rid of blood?
It's not what me or you or any other person would search for. But I don't know how in the world he would explain that away.
With the evidence against Jerry Osborne mounting, what was still missing for detectives was a motive.
I said yes, tell the investigator they need to call me immediately.
The answer might be hidden inside the secretive communications between 2 best friends, Susan and Hollie.
He said, oh, there's emails. And I said, yes, sir.
Investigators learned Susan was sending Hollie emails for more than a year, and Hollie had saved every shocking one of them.
You could tell after he saw the emails that he knew there was more to the story.
The subject line of the email read, "Don't mention this in text." Susan Osborne was about to share an explosive revelation about her husband, Jerry.
She sent them through email because she didn't want him reading her text because he was kind of possessive over her phone, evidently.
The email was to her best friend, Hollie Hatfield, who claimed not long after the couple married 4 years ago, Jerry became very controlling. She says he'd read Susan's texts and listen to her phone calls.
She would have to talk to me on speakerphone when he was around because I guess he wanted to listen into the conversation.
In January of 2016, Susan forwarded Hollie emails that had been written by Jerry.
The first email she sent me was the screenshot of the emails back and forth between him and other men. And then the second email she sent me the same day was the profile page back from 2011 for the escort page.
Where he was essentially prostituting himself.
That's what it appears to be.
Hollie says her jaw dropped.
Hi there, guys. My name is Jay.
But there it was, in print. Jerry's ad on a website called boyscourt.com.
I'm looking for older, generous gentlemen to spend some quality time with. Your satisfaction is guaranteed every time. Your sexy boy toy is waiting.
Hollie says Susan was certain her husband Jerry was the one pictured in the ad.
How was Susan able to identify Jerry? Because it's from behind.
Yeah, she said she was able to identify him from the tattoos.
And then there's a bow?
Yes,
on
gift bow on his right cheek.
derriere.
But Jerry's ink isn't the only thing that blew his cover.
The phone number that was in that profile page was a phone number I think he used to have.
Hollie isn't the only person Susan told about Jerry's alleged prostituting past.
She called me and she was very, very upset, very sick. She said, "Mom, I need to explain something to you and tell you what I found."
Linda ANKLAM says her daughter wanted advice about what she should do.
So I had asked her, you need to talk to him and find out why. Because I thought this only happened in the past. But I think that she believed it was happening all along.
Linda says she never talked about it with her daughter again. But Susan did continue to confide in Hollie.
So Susan finds out that at some point her husband was a male prostitute and currently he's cheating on her with other men.
Yes.
Does she confront him?
She did later down the road at one point start mentioning to him something she'd found out because he asked her why she wouldn't sleep in the bed with him.
But she says Susan didn't tell Jerry everything.
She knew a lot more than what she ever let on to him.
That's because Hollie says Susan needed to carefully plan her escape before she could leave her husband.
So she said, I have to get a job first. I cannot put the kids without insurance.
Hollie, however, isn't sure if Susan was really serious about walking away.
I know she loved him, and there were times that I would think with her, it was like she was in denial and she didn't want to leave him. The last thing she said to me on May 16th, the day we left Alabama, was that they loved each other and that they had worked things out.
But after discovering her husband's secret sex life, Hollie says Susan started to become paranoid.
One time, me, her, and Evan went to eat in a restaurant, and she made the comment that she would not sit with her back turned toward the door. And I said, is everything okay? And she said, yeah, I just have to be careful.
At the same time, she claims Jerry became more controlling.
The last time me and her went to eat by ourselves, he dropped her off at the restaurant and picked her up. She was not allowed to drive there.
I mean, this takes being possessive to a whole new dark and sordid level.
She had verbalized on multiple occasions that he was crazy and they had to watch out.
Then, just 2 weeks after Hollie moved to Florida, investigators and family wonder, did something cause Jerry to snap and murder both his wife and stepson?
We obviously think that, this lady and her son, it doesn't look good right now.
Cops say Susan may have uncovered too many of her husband's secrets.
At this point, is Jerry Osborne a suspect?
He's a person of interest.
When I said Jerry Osborne, is he a person of interest, you're confidently nodding yes.
Oh, he's definitely a person of interest, and he's probably our only person of interest.
Detectives confirm exclusively to Crime Watch Daily that possible blood evidence has been found inside Jerry Osborne's house. It's currently being tested to determine if it belongs to Susan or Evan. With such a serious picture painted against Jerry,
Jerry, a serious allegation was made by the sheriff.
we wanted to give him a chance to defend himself.
Hey, Mr. Osborne. My name is Jason Matera with Crime Watch Daily. We're doing a story on the disappearance of your wife and stepson. We're hoping you can shed some light on what happened, if you heard from her, maybe you heard from Evan.
I've been advised on counsel not to talk to anybody, so if you have any questions, refer to Mr. Trey Norman.
We talked to the sheriff, and he said that she found out about your extracurricular activities as a male prostitute, and you may have killed her and Evan. Is that true?
We could still hear Jerry inside, so we continued asking our questions.
This looks like a fairly newly constructed home, and yet you were ripping out the flooring, repainting, some serious demolition, while your wife and stepson are missing. The sheriff has named you a person of interest, and he said you're the only person of interest. Did Susan find out about the boy escort website?
But Jerry made it clear he didn't want to talk to us.
So it looks like Jerry Osborne called the sheriff's department on us. Funny, because we were just with the sheriff this morning, talking about Jerry and his missing wife and stepson. Perhaps Jerry Osborne can come out of the house and clear this whole thing up.
Hey, look, I understand what you're doing. No problem at all. Just make sure you stay off of his property.
Yeah.
It was clear Jerry didn't want to talk to us, but his lawyer did agree to a phone interview.
It's not the first time that she's disappeared with people looking for her. I will say it's never been on this scale.
While Trey Norman agrees the disappearance is odd.
You know, if someone wants to stay hidden bad enough, it's certainly possible if they're willing to go to those lengths.
Mr. Norman told us the remodeling done after Susan allegedly left was actually Jerry's parents' idea.
If they wanted to paint over some of the things in the house because it just looked so hideous.
Not only did they dislike Susan's decorating, they claimed she had spray-painted vulgar phrases on the walls and floors before leaving.
The language that you probably don't want to put on your television show.
Trey didn't want to comment on the allegations that Jerry was once a male escort. When we asked about the alternative lifestyle, his only response was,
the way the world is now, I don't know that there is an alternative lifestyle.
Jerry's lawyer believes his client has been unfairly convicted in the court of public opinion.
No one's giving him a chance of innocent until you're proven guilty.
Sheriff Franklin believes the test being done on blood found in Jerry's home will go a long way in proving his guilt or innocence.
Sheriff, when do you expect these lab reports back?
It's probably going to be a few more months, and I know that frustrates the family probably.
It bothers me every day knowing that he is free.
And if Jerry Osborne did have something to do with her daughter and grandson's deaths,
What are you feeling now?
I feel hate. I feel hate for Jerry. After losing my husband and losing my daughter and grandson, I feel dead inside. I feel empty.
If you know anything about the disappearance of Susan Osborne and her son Evan, you can call the Secret Witness Hotline for Elmore County. That number is 334-567-5227.